Welcome to Health 2660. Here we don't just talk about health, we tell the stories that heal. Now please listen to the story. Agnes stared at the ceiling, the pale morning light doing little to dispel the gloom that had settled over her. It wasn't the light outside, it was the light inside that was fading. Not all at once, not like a blown bulb, but slowly flickering and dimming like a dying ember. That's how it felt anyway. As if pieces of her, the very essence of Agnes, were being stolen, one memory, one word, one simple everyday ability at a time. 73 years. A good life, a quiet life, a life filled with the gentle rhythms of tea in the morning, the soft rustle of leaves in her garden, the cheerful chirping of birds flitting around the bird feeder she so diligently kept stocked. She'd always prided herself on her sharp mind, her ability to recall details, to engage in lively conversations, to remember birthdays and anniversaries without needing to consult a calendar. But now the calendar was a lifeline. She clung to a desperate reminder of dates and events that seemed to slip through her fingers like grains of sand. The tea ritual at least remained constant. The familiar weight of the ceramic mug in her hand, the fragrant steam swirling upwards, the comforting warmth spreading through her as she took the first sip. Earl Grey, always. A simple pleasure, a small anchor in a sea of uncertainty. But even that small pleasure was becoming tainted. She'd found herself staring into the swirling tea leaves, wondering what she'd been thinking about just moments before the thought vanished like a wisp of smoke. The garden, her sanctuary, was becoming a source of frustration. She'd forget which plants she'd watered, which ones she hadn't. She'd find herself standing amongst the roses, a pair of gardening shears in her hand, utterly clueless as to why she was there. The names of the flowers, once so readily on her tongue, petunia, geranium, impatiens, now danced just out of reach, taunting her with their elusiveness. And then there was Sophie, her granddaughter, the light of her life, a vibrant, energetic spark of joy that had filled her world since the day she was born. Sophie with her bright eyes, her infectious laugh, her endless stream of questions and stories. But even Sophie, even the memory of Sophie was starting to feel distant. The day Sophie asked about their song felt like a sharp blow to the chest, a stab of fear so profound that it left her breathless, a song they'd made up together years ago during one of Sophie's countless sleepovers, a silly little ditty about a mischievous cat and a runaway balloon. A song that had been a secret code, a bond between grandmother and granddaughter. And Agnes couldn't remember it. She'd plastered on a smile, hummed a generic tune, hoping to deflect Sophie's attention. But she saw the flicker of disappointment in Sophie's eyes, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Is Grandma forgetting me? That night, sleep evaded her. She tossed and turned the weight of her failing memory, pressing down on her like a physical burden. Is this just old age? She whispered into the darkness. Or is something wrong? It wasn't just her memory. Her legs felt weak, unsteady. Simple tasks like standing up from a chair now required a conscious effort, a bracing of herself against the armrests. She'd nearly fallen in the kitchen, reaching for a jar of jam, her balance suddenly betraying her. The world seemed to tilt to sway, threatening to send her crashing to the floor. Pride had kept her silent, had prevented her from confiding in anyone about her growing concerns. She didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want to be seen as frail or incapable. But the fear was growing, gnawing at her insides. Driven by desperation, she reached for her tablet. The cool, smooth surface felt strangely comforting in her trembling hands. She typed in her queries, the words appearing on the screen like desperate pleas for help. Why am I losing my memory? Why do my legs feel weak at 73? The internet, a vast ocean of information, both helpful and harmful, threw back a tidal wave of possibilities: Alzheimer's dementia, age-related cognitive decline, vitamin deficiencies, side effects of medications. The list went on and on, each potential diagnosis more terrifying than the last. Then, a video caught her eye. The title was sensational, almost clickbaity, but something about it resonated with her. Seniors: 3 vegetables you should never eat, and 3 you must eat. Agnes, a creature of habit and routine, had always considered herself to be a healthy eater. She ate plenty of fruits and vegetables. She avoided processed foods. She cooked her meals from scratch. But she'd never paid much attention to the specific nutritional needs of older adults. She'd always assumed that what was good for everyone else was good for her. The video, narrated by a woman with a soothing voice and a reassuring smile, claimed that certain vegetables, while generally considered healthy, could actually be detrimental to seniors, specifically white potatoes, eggplant, and green bell peppers. Agnes was stunned. White potatoes were a staple in her diet. Mashed potatoes on Sundays were a tradition, a comforting reminder of her childhood. Eggplant pasta was one of her favorite dishes, a simple, flavorful meal that she often prepared for herself. And green bell peppers were a frequent addition to her stir-fries, adding a pop of color and a touch of sweetness. The video explained that these vegetables, while not inherently harmful, contained compounds that could exacerbate inflammation in older adults. Inflammation, the video claimed, could lead to poor blood flow, which in turn could impair cognitive function and reduce mobility. It sounded plausible. Agnes knew that inflammation was a major factor in many age-related diseases, and she had noticed that her symptoms seemed to worsen after she ate certain foods. Coincidence? Perhaps. But what if it wasn't? What if these seemingly innocent vegetables were actually contributing to her decline? The video then went on to list 3 vegetables that were particularly beneficial for seniors: carrots, broccoli, and spinach. Carrots for improved vision and nerve health. Broccoli for strong legs and a healthy heart. Spinach for better circulation and clearer thinking. Agnes listened intently, scribbling notes on a pad of paper. Carrots, broccoli, spinach. She repeated to herself, committing the names to memory. She felt a flicker of hope, a sense of empowerment that she hadn't felt in months. Maybe she could do something to reverse her decline. Maybe it wasn't too late. She went to the kitchen, a sense of purpose driving her forward. She rummaged through her drawers until she found a thick black marker. She walked over to the refrigerator and with a steady hand wrote in bold letters, "Eat to remember, eat to walk, eat to live." The next morning, Agnes embarked on a mission. She started with her pantry, ruthlessly purging it of all traces of white potatoes, eggplant, and green bell peppers. She felt a pang of guilt as she tossed the vegetables into the trash, but the fear of further decline outweighed any sense of wastefulness. She rationalized that she was making room for better things, for foods that would nourish her body and mind, rather than deplete them. She packed the green bell peppers into a bag and walked next door to Mrs. Peterson's house. Mrs. Peterson, a sweet elderly woman with a perpetual smile and a fondness for gardening, was always happy to receive a gift of fresh produce. "Agnes, dear, how lovely to see you." Mrs. Peterson exclaimed, her eyes twinkling with delight. "What a generous offering. These will be perfect for my stuffed peppers recipe." Agnes smiled, feeling a sense of satisfaction in passing on the vegetables to someone who could enjoy them without fear of negative consequences. She didn't tell Mrs. Peterson about the video or her dietary experiment. She didn't want to alarm her or make her feel self-conscious about her own eating habits. As Agnes walked back home, she paused for a moment, holding her now empty produce bag. She remembered something else the video mentioned, the difference between green bell peppers and red ones. They came from the same plant, but green peppers were harvested early. That meant they had higher levels of lectins and solanine compounds that could trigger inflammation in older adults, especially in the joints and nerves. But the red, orange, and yellow bell peppers, they were fully ripened, sweeter, and much lower in those irritating compounds. They also had more antioxidants like beta-carotene and vitamin C, which supported brain health and the immune system. Agnes made a mental note. It's not about avoiding all peppers, just the ones that haven't finished growing. Then, armed with a reusable shopping bag, Agnes headed to the local farmer's market. The vibrant colors and fresh aromas of the market filled her with a sense of optimism. She wandered through the stalls, carefully selecting the freshest, most vibrant carrots, broccoli, and spinach she could find. She bought organic whenever possible, feeling that it was worth the extra expense to avoid pesticides and other harmful chemicals. She talked to the farmers, asking them about their growing practices and their recommendations for preparing the vegetables. She learned that steaming broccoli lightly was the best way to preserve its nutrients. She discovered that sautéing spinach with olive oil and garlic enhanced its flavor and made it more palatable. And she found that shredded carrots added a touch of sweetness and crunch to just about anything from soups and salads to even her morning oatmeal. Back in her kitchen, Agnes felt a surge of excitement. She carefully washed and prepared the vegetables, feeling a sense of connection to the earth and to the process of nourishing her body. She steamed the broccoli until it was tender crisp, then drizzled it with a squeeze of lemon juice. She sautéed the spinach with olive oil, garlic, and a pinch of red pepper flakes. She shredded the carrots and added them to a pot of homemade vegetable soup. The aroma that filled her kitchen was intoxicating, a far cry from the bland, processed foods she'd grown accustomed to eating. She sat down at the table, a plate piled high, with her newly acquired vegetables, and took a deep breath. "Here's to a new beginning," she said aloud, raising her fork in a silent toast. The first week was a challenge. She missed the comfort of mashed potatoes, the satisfying chewiness of eggplant pasta, the familiar crunch of green bell peppers in her stir-fries. But she persevered, reminding herself of the reasons why she was making these changes. She focused on the positive, on the potential benefits she might experience if she stuck with it, and slowly, gradually, she began to notice subtle improvements. She wasn't as dizzy when she stood up. Her legs didn't cramp as often. She remembered the name of her neighbor's dog, a fluffy white poodle named Coco. After 2 weeks, something wonderful happened. Sophie called on the phone. "Grandma," she said, her voice filled with playful anticipation. "Do you remember my backpack?" Agnes closed her eyes, concentrating. The image of Sophie's backpack, tucked away in the recesses of her memory, slowly began to emerge. "Purple," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "with sparkles, and a unicorn keychain." Sophie burst out laughing. "You remembered, Grandma. You remembered." Agnes felt tears welling up in her eyes. Tears of relief, tears of joy, tears of gratitude. She'd remembered. She hadn't lost Sophie, not completely. There was still hope. By the 4th week, Agnes was feeling like a new woman. She was walking to the market again without needing to lean on her cane. She felt stronger, lighter, more energetic. Her steps were steadier, her gait more confident. Even her doctor noticed the difference. During her regular checkup, Dr. Lee was visibly impressed. "Your blood pressure is better," she said, examining Agnes's chart. "Your memory score went up. Your cholesterol is down. What have you changed?" Agnes laughed, feeling a surge of pride. "I just started eating vegetables that love me back," she said, sharing her story with the astonished doctor. Dr. Lee, a firm believer in the power of nutrition, was intrigued. She encouraged Agnes to continue her dietary experiment and promised to monitor her progress closely. Agnes shared her story with her friends at the senior center, who were initially skeptical, but gradually became more open to the idea. She wrote out simple recipes, demonstrating how to prepare the vegetables in delicious and appealing ways. She even helped start a Healthy Tuesdays lunch group, where she and her friends could share healthy recipes and enjoy nutritious meals together. Agnes wasn't just getting older, she was getting stronger, both physically and mentally. The fear that had once consumed her had been replaced by a sense of purpose and empowerment. She had taken control of her health, and she was reaping the rewards. One weekend, Sophie came over for a family party. As music played, Agnes took Sophie's hands and danced slowly with her. Her legs held steady, her smile was bright, her mind was clear. She looked down at her granddaughter, her heart overflowing with love, and whispered, "I'll always remember you now." Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest decisions. For Agnes, it began with one simple choice: knowing which vegetables to leave behind and which ones to welcome in. It wasn't a magic cure, of course. She still had moments of forgetfulness, moments of physical weakness. But she had learned to manage her symptoms, to mitigate their effects, to live a full and meaningful life, despite the challenges of aging. And she had rediscovered the joy of simple things, the taste of fresh vegetables, the warmth of the sun on her skin, the sound of her granddaughter's laughter. These were the things that truly mattered, the things that made life worth living. Health 2660. Thanks you for listening. We'll see you in the next video, and until then, be kind to yourself.